To knit a ribbed scarf, first you're going to cast on an even number of stitches, and the number is going to be determined by the width of the needle that you're using, the size of the needle, and the type of yarn. If you're not following a pattern, you're going to want to just test it out, potentially knit a few rows, and then you can see how wide it is. For a ribbed scarf, typically what I find is that for any ribbed pattern, the rows will tend to shrink once it's knit because of the pattern. So err on the side of a slightly wider than you would like if this is the first scarf that you're knitting. Okay. What you're going to do is there are two different types of commonly used rib patterns. One is a 2x2 and the other is a 1x1. And what that means is you're going to knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. And that's the 2x2. If you want to do a 1x1, which is going to be finer ribbing pattern, you can do 1 by 1 by 1. So it really just depends on the aesthetic that you're going for. Here I'm going to do a 2x2 to show you what that looks like. So knit 2, then bring the yarn in front, purl 2, put the yarn in back, knit 2, bring the yarn front, purl 2, bring the yarn back, knit 2, purl 2. You're really not going to be able to actually see the pattern until you get a few rows down. I'm using a chunky yarn here because for very first ribbed scarf, you'll see results a lot faster if you use chunky yarn. You could knit a scarf quickly in a few hours if it's really chunky, and a little bit longer if it's finer than that. Okay, so now you see here I've turned it to the second row. You see that there are some loops here for the purls and no loops for the knits. So whenever you see a knit, you're going to knit, and whenever you see these horizontal lines, those are purls, you're going to purl. You're going to want to follow this in pattern. One thing I didn't do here, but you might want to do, is this ended with a purl here, this ends with a knit here. If you want it to look symmetrical, you might want to add a couple loops to make sure that it will be the same pattern. So here we go. We're going to knit the knits and purl the purls. So whenever you see something that says knit in pattern, it means precisely this. Knit the knits and purl the purls. So you see the vertical lines are knits, so I'm going to go front to back, knit. Horizontal lines are purls, and purl. Knit 2, purl 2. For a chunky yarn, you probably don't need to do a knit 2, purl 2. You could probably get away with doing the knit 1, purl 1, and it'll look really nice. For a finer gauge yarn, you're going to want to try the 2x2 first. And that looks really nice. I know you can't see it here yet, but pattern will start forming. So here I've knit a few more rows of the 2x2 knit just to give you a sense of what that looks like. It's actually pretty wide here because I'm using a very chunky yarn. Probably don't need it to be, it's probably better to use a 1x1 if you're going to use chunky yarn. You can see here it stretches. The 2x2 knit or any kind of ribbed pattern is very stretchy. So here is a sample of a scarf that's using a 2x2 knit, and this is with a much finer gauge yarn. You can see how it stretches. If you look closely, you can see the 2x2, 2 knits and 2 purls. That's what that looks like. This is what the 1x1 rib looks like. So if you can see here, there's one row of knits, then purls in between, knits, purls, knit, purl, stretches, but collapses like that. So it looks like it's actually a row of just knits on both sides. So once it's done, it looks pretty neat, and it tends to be a little bit thicker than a garter stitch because it feels like it's a double layer because of it stretching in like that. So this is how you do a 1x1 rib.